You kissed me while I was out? The rancher shocked. Her reply changed everything. The sun had just begun to climb over the distant hills when Jake stepped out of his small cabin, stretching his arms and taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. The ranch lay quiet around him, the wide open field stretching endlessly in every direction. The smell of fresh hay mixed with the earthy scent of the soil after last night's light rain. Cattle lowed softly in the distance, their shadows long and gentle in the early sunlight. For Jake, this morning felt like any other, but there was a sense of calm that he rarely let himself notice. The ranch had always been his world, and he liked it that way. Predictable, steady, and dependable. Jake was a tall man with broad shoulders and hands roughened by years of work on the land. His skin had been tanned by the sun, and his hair carried the light touch of gray at the edges. People in town often said he seemed serious, even a little intimidating, but anyone who spent a day with him quickly realized there was a quiet kindness beneath his reserved exterior. He loved his life on the ranch, the rhythm of work, the care of animals, and the steady beat of days that were never rushed but never dull. Today, however, something felt different. Perhaps it was the soft rustle of leaves in the morning wind or the way the sun glimmered on the water troughs. Maybe it was the new energy that had entered his life recently, the presence of someone who brought laughter and warmth into his usually quiet world. Lily had arrived at the ranch a few weeks ago, sent by a friend to help with the bookkeeping and daily chores. She was unlike anyone Jake had met in years. While he had grown accustomed to the silence of the ranch and the comfort of routine, Lily was lively, cheerful, and unafraid of the hard work the ranch demanded. Lily had arrived on a bright spring morning, the kind of day when the air is fresh and the scent of flowers drifts softly across the fields. She was smaller than Jake, with quick hands and bright eyes that seemed to notice everything. She laughed easily, even when she stumbled over the rhythm of ranch life at first. There had been a moment when she nearly tripped over a rope, falling onto the soft grass, and Jake had caught her just in time. Her laughter had been contagious, and even he had felt a small tug of amusement and relief. Since then, she had thrown herself into learning everything about the ranch, from feeding the animals to mending fences. Jake often watched her quietly as she worked. There was a graceful confidence to the way she moved, even when handling tasks that were new to her. She didn't complain, didn't shy away from the dirt and sweat of ranch life, and somehow she made even the most mundane chores seem lighter. Yet she also had a spark of playfulness. She liked to joke, tease, and sometimes challenge him in small ways that made him laugh, though he rarely admitted it. She had brought a brightness to his orderly world, and though he wouldn't say it aloud, he had started to enjoy having someone around who could make him feel lighter. On this particular morning, Jake had a list of tasks in mind. The fences needed repairing after last night's rain, the cattle had to be fed, and the storage barn required organizing. Normally, he would have gone straight to work, moving efficiently from one task to the next. But today, he found himself lingering a moment, watching Lily from across the field. She was already at work tending to the garden near the cabin, and the sunlight caught in her hair in a way that made it seem almost golden. He turned his attention away quickly, reminding himself that work came first. There was always something to do on a ranch, and the animals and land depended on him. Lily noticed him watching and gave a small, teasing wave. She smiled brightly, and for a second Jake felt a strange warmth spread across his chest. He cleared his throat, trying to mask the feeling, and nodded toward the barn. "Better get started," he said, his voice gruff but carrying an almost invisible edge of amusement. Lily laughed, a soft, melodious sound that seemed to echo across the fields, and she wiped her hands on her apron before heading toward the barn herself. The morning passed in its usual rhythm. Jake repaired broken fence posts, checking each one carefully to ensure the cattle would be safe. He worked with steady hands, muscles moving with practiced ease. Lily, meanwhile, organized the storage barn, lifting bags of feed and stacking supplies neatly along the walls. Occasionally, she would make a small comment about how something could be done differently, or ask Jake a question about a task he had done 1,000 times. He would answer patiently, sometimes with a small smile at her curiosity. By mid-morning, the sun had risen higher, casting warm light across the ranch. Birds chirped from the trees, and the occasional rustle in the tall grass reminded Jake that nature was always alive and present. Despite the steady flow of work, there was a sense of quiet happiness in the air, a harmony that came from doing meaningful work and sharing it with someone who appreciated it. For Jake, these moments were rare, and he found himself watching Lily more than usual, noticing the way she moved, the determination in her eyes, and the occasional playful grin she directed at him. After finishing the repairs on the fence near the west pasture, Jake decided it was time to take a break. He walked toward the small creek that ran along the edge of the ranch, water sparkling under the sunlight. Lily was already there, bending down to refill the water trough for the animals. She looked up as he approached, her eyes bright and cheeks flushed from work. "You're taking a break?" she asked, teasing. "I need one," he replied, trying to sound firm but finding it hard to maintain his usual stoic tone. He squatted by the water, letting the cool liquid trickle over his hands. Lily laughed softly at the sight, and it was impossible for him not to smile in return. They sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the gentle lowing of cattle, the rustling of leaves, and the soft trickle of the creek. There was no rush, no urgency, just the two of them taking a quiet moment amidst the endless work of the ranch. For Jake it was a rare feeling, one he hadn't realized he was missing, the sense that he wasn't entirely alone in his world. Lily broke the silence, speaking softly, but with a hint of curiosity. "Do you ever think about leaving the ranch? Seeing what's out there beyond these fields?" Jake shook his head slowly. "No," he said firmly. "This is where I belong. It's not always easy, but it's home. Everything I care about is here." Lily nodded, understanding the depth of his words. "I get that," she said. "But sometimes it's nice to wonder." She smiled, and Jake felt the warmth of her presence once more. As the sun continued to rise, casting long golden shadows across the ranch, Jake felt a sense of calm settle over him. The work was far from over, but in this quiet moment he realized that the ranch had changed in subtle ways. It wasn't just the land, the animals, or the fences. It was the presence of Lily. Her energy, her laughter, and her courage had brought something new into his life. Something he hadn't expected but now could not ignore. By late morning, the routine continued. The cattle were fed, the barn was tidy, and the fences held strong. Jake worked efficiently, moving from one task to the next, while Lily assisted wherever she could. There was a rhythm between them, unspoken but understood. They worked together, sometimes exchanging a word or two, sometimes just sharing a smile. And though neither spoke of it aloud, a quiet bond had begun to form. A connection born not from grand gestures or dramatic events, but from shared labor, laughter, and small moments of understanding. As noon approached, Jake finally stood, stretching his aching muscles. He looked out across the fields, watching the sun shimmer on the tall grasses, feeling a sense of satisfaction. The ranch was thriving, the animals were safe, and for the first time in a long while he felt that the day, and perhaps the days to come, held more than just work. They held possibility. Lily looked up at him from the barn door, her hands on her hips and a grin on her face. "Lunch?" she asked. Jake nodded. "Lunch," he said. And for the first time that day he felt the full weight of a small but important truth. Life on the ranch was better when shared. And though neither of them knew it yet, that quiet morning would mark the beginning of a series of moments that would change the ranch and their hearts forever. The afternoon sun was warm but not harsh, spreading a golden glow across the ranch. Jake had returned from the town just after lunch, bringing with him supplies and a few items Lily had requested earlier. The back of his truck rattled lightly as he drove up the dusty path, and he could see Lily already hard at work near the pasture, moving with her usual energy and determination. She was helping one of the calves that had wandered too close to a fallen fence post. The little animal struggled, trying to pull itself free from the small tangle of wire. Lily's brow was furrowed with concentration as she carefully knelt beside it, speaking softly to calm it. Her hands moved quickly and confidently, guiding the calf until it could stand safely again. Jake watched for a moment, a mix of admiration and surprise rising in his chest. She had a way of taking charge without making it seem forced, and he found himself appreciating her courage and skill more than he had before. "Need a hand?" Jake called, stepping closer. His voice was calm, steady, the kind that usually carried authority on the ranch. Lily looked up and smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I've almost got it," she said, her voice light but confident. "This little guy is stubborn, but I think I can manage." Jake nodded, watching as she carefully freed the calf. She worked with patience and gentleness, speaking to it as if it could understand her words. The calf finally stood fully on its feet, shaking itself and letting out a soft, relieved bleat. Lily leaned back on her heels, laughing softly at the animal's antics. Jake felt a quiet warmth at the sight. He had seen many people come and go from the ranch, but few had the courage, intelligence, and heart that Lily seemed to carry naturally. She had a way of bringing life to even the most ordinary tasks. "Well done," he said, finally walking closer. "You handled that perfectly." Lily shrugged, still smiling.
"It's nothing," she said. "I just didn't want it to get hurt."
Poor thing looked scared. Jake could see the truth in her eyes. She genuinely cared.
He nodded again, silently acknowledging her effort, and for a moment the ranch felt lighter, warmer, almost as if the sunlight itself had grown brighter.
As they stood there, a familiar voice called out from the fence line. It was Tom, Jake's longtime neighbor and friend. Tom was tall and easygoing, with a quick smile and a tendency to tease everyone in the vicinity. He had been watching from a distance, his hands resting casually on the fence. "Well, look at you," Tom said, his voice carrying across the field. "Saving calves and looking like a hero at the same time. You've got some serious ranch skills, I'll say that." Lily laughed, a little embarrassed by the praise. "I was just trying not to let it get hurt," she said modestly. Tom leaned closer, lowering his voice playfully. "Come on now, don't be so humble. I saw the way you handled that. You could run this ranch on your own someday." Jake raised an eyebrow, a small smirk forming on his face. He didn't like to admit it, but Tom's teasing wasn't entirely unwelcome. Lily's confidence and competence impressed him, though he would never say it out loud. "Thanks, Tom," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "I think I'll leave the big decisions to Jake here, though."
He seems to have everything under control. Jake felt a small laugh escape him despite himself.
Lily's words were innocent, but there was a hint of mischief in them that made him shift slightly. Uncomfortable, but intrigued.
He wasn't used to this kind of lighthearted interaction. The ranch was usually all work, all routine.
Yet with Lily, there was a spark of unpredictability, a sense that anything could happen, even in the quietest moments. The afternoon continued with its usual rhythm, the calm of the ranch punctuated by small bursts of activity. Jake moved to check on the fences along the far pasture, hammering posts back into place while Lily helped gather hay for the animals. Occasionally, they exchanged brief words or gestures, sharing the satisfaction of a job done well. But beneath the ordinary tasks, there was a quiet tension, unspoken feelings and awareness growing between them, subtle yet unmistakable. At one point, a small breeze swept across the field, carrying the scent of fresh grass and wildflowers. Lily paused to take it in, closing her eyes and smiling. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in a long time, surrounded by wide-open spaces, animals, and work that was honest and demanding. Here, she could be herself without pretense, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. Jake noticed her pause, standing a few feet away. There was something in the way she looked at the fields, at the sky, and even at him, a quiet confidence mixed with warmth and curiosity. He realized that the routine of the ranch had prepared him for many challenges, but it had not prepared him for the feelings stirring in his chest. Lily's presence was changing something inside him, something he hadn't expected and wasn't yet ready to name. As the afternoon moved on, a small problem arose near the western fence. One of the calves had wandered too close to a broken fence post, caught its leg, and was struggling to get free. Lily rushed to help, her movements quick and decisive. She spoke softly to calm the calf, kneeling beside it and gently lifting the leg. The calf shook nervously, but she held firm, showing patience and understanding. "Careful there," Jake said, approaching slowly. "You don't want to get hurt yourself." "I've got it," Lily replied, not looking up. "I just need a moment." Jake watched her, feeling a mixture of pride and worry. She was capable and brave, but there was a recklessness in her determination that made him want to step in, to protect her. He took a step closer, but Lily shook her head slightly, smiling at him. "I've got this," she said, and the confidence in her voice left him momentarily speechless. She gently guided the calf until it was free, then laughed softly as it ran off to rejoin the others. Tom, who had been watching nearby, whistled softly.
I'm telling you, Lily, you're a natural.
That was impressive. Lily turned toward him, playfully brushing imaginary dust off her hands. Thank you. I'll add that to my growing list of accomplishments on the ranch, she said, laughing. Jake felt his chest tighten slightly at the exchange, though he couldn't quite explain why. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. More like a sudden awareness that Lily's charm and spirit were affecting him more than he wanted to admit. He shifted his attention back to the fence, finishing his work with slightly more focus than before, determined not to let his emotions interfere with his tasks. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, Jake and Lily continued their work. There was a comfortable rhythm to their movements, a sense of partnership forming quietly but steadily. The ranch felt alive in a way that was different from before, filled with energy, laughter, and the subtle tension of unspoken feelings. Finally, Lily stood up from the barn, brushing the dust from her clothes. She stretched, a satisfied smile on her face, and looked out across the ranch. "It's been a good day," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Jake nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The day had been ordinary in many ways. Chores, repairs, tending the animals. But it had also been extraordinary, filled with moments that mattered, moments that would linger in memory. Little did they know, the calm of the afternoon was about to be disrupted in a way neither expected. What began as a simple day of work and quiet connection would soon take a sudden turn, bringing shock, laughter, and a moment that would test their understanding of each other. And at that moment, neither Jake nor Lily could have guessed just how much that single afternoon would change everything. The evening air had begun to cool, painting the ranch in soft shades of orange and gold as the sun dipped behind the hills. The cattle were settling down in the pastures, their gentle lowing blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird returning to its nest. For a while the ranch was quiet, peaceful, and ordinary. Yet, beneath the calm, a ripple of tension had begun to form, one neither Jake nor Lily had anticipated. Earlier in the day, a small, playful moment had turned into an unexpected ripple of gossip. As Jake had finished tending to the fences, Lily had decided to check the barn for a missing bucket. On her way, she had crossed paths with Tom, who was leaning casually against the fence, watching the last rays of sun shimmer across the field. "Looks like you're handling the ranch better than I expected," Tom said with a playful grin. "I mean, not that I doubted you, but—" "Impressive," Lily laughed softly, brushing off the praise with her usual light-hearted charm. In a moment of playful teasing, she leaned toward Tom and planted a quick, cheeky kiss on his cheek. It was brief, spontaneous, and entirely meant as a joke. She laughed immediately after, stepping back with a hand over her mouth. Tom chuckled, rubbing the side of his face. "Well, that was unexpected," he said, his tone teasing but friendly. At the time, neither of them considered the possibility that someone might have seen or heard about the gesture. But small towns had a way of turning the tiniest events into stories, and soon enough rumors began to spread. By the time Jake returned to the ranch that evening, he had already heard whispers from a passing neighbor about what had happened. He felt a tight knot form in his chest, a mix of surprise, confusion, and something he didn't want to admit. Jealousy made him pause before he even approached Lily. The sun was low, casting long shadows, and the air seemed heavier than it had all day. For a moment he just stood by the fence, watching the barn and trying to make sense of what he had heard. Finally, he walked toward Lily, his boots crunching softly on the dry dirt path. She was stacking some feed bags in the corner of the barn, humming to herself, unaware of the storm approaching. The ranch had always been their shared space of calm, but now the air between them felt different, charged, expectant. "Lily!" he said, his voice steady but low, carrying a weight she immediately noticed. She looked up, brushing her hands on her apron. "Hey, Jake," she said, her smile warm and open. "Long day, huh?" Jake took a deep breath, trying to keep his emotions in check. "I heard something today," he began, his words measured but firm. "About you and Tom." Lily froze for a moment, realizing immediately what he meant. The playful kiss, meant as a joke, had reached him. She had expected laughter, maybe a little teasing, but not this tension. Her heart raced slightly, and she felt the weight of his gaze, steady and unwavering.
It was just a joke, she said quickly, stepping closer. I didn't mean anything by it.
It was playful, nothing more.
I didn't.
Jake held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence.
I know you're saying that,
he said, his voice calm but tinged with hurt.
But seeing or hearing about it.
It was shocking. I didn't expect it. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about it right now.
Lily's eyes softened as she took in his words. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so it carried only to him.
Jake, listen to me. I didn't do it to hurt you. I didn't do it because I like him.
She paused, searching for the right words. I like you, Jake.
Only you. Always only you.
Jake blinked, taken aback. Her honesty hit him with a force he hadn't anticipated. He had built walls around himself for so long, relying on routine and work to structure his life. He had never let anyone close enough to matter, and yet here was Lily, standing before him, fearless in her truth.
I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice quieter now. I wasn't expecting this.
I don't want to lose control, Lily.
I work hard, I plan, I make sure everything is safe. I don't know how to handle feelings like this. Lily reached out, placing her hand gently on his arm.
Jake, you don't have to handle them perfectly,
she said softly.
You don't have to have all the answers. Feelings are messy, and they're real.
But they're also worth something if you're honest with yourself. He looked down at her hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of her touch. For a moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. The barn around them, the soft glow of sunset filtering through the open doors, the quiet of the animals settling nearby. Nothing else existed in that moment except the truth they were sharing.
I've never felt this before, he admitted. Not for anyone.
Not really.
I know, Lily said, her voice gentle. And I wasn't going to tell you today, not like this, but I couldn't let it go unsaid. I needed you to know, because you matter more than anything here.
Jake's chest tightened. He had always prided himself on being strong, practical, and unshakable, but Lily's words had cracked something open inside him. The surprise, the shock he had felt earlier began to shift into something else. Understanding, connection, and a quiet relief that maybe he wasn't alone in feeling this way. For a few moments, they stood in silence, simply looking at each other. The tension that had filled the ranch earlier that day began to dissolve, replaced by a tentative understanding. Lily's courage, honesty, and warmth had changed the dynamic between them, and Jake felt the first real stirrings of trust and openness he had experienced in years. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but steady. You're different from anyone I've ever known, he said. I didn't expect this. I don't know what will happen next, but I want to try. With you. Lily's eyes lit up with relief and happiness. That's all I wanted to hear, she said, smiling. We'll figure it out together, Jake. Step by step. No rush, no pressure. Just us. Jake nodded slowly, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. For the first time in a long while, he realized that life wasn't just about work, routine, or keeping everything under control. It was also about connection, trust, and allowing oneself to be vulnerable. Lily had opened a door for him, and he was ready, finally, to step through it. The ranch around them seemed to breathe with the shift in their relationship. The cattle moved quietly in the pastures, the wind whispered softly through the trees, and the sun continued its slow descent behind the hills. Everything felt ordinary, yet extraordinary, a perfect reflection of the moment they shared. As the evening deepened into twilight, Jake and Lily began to finish the remaining chores together. They carried feed, mended small fence posts, and checked on the animals, their movements in sync in a way that felt natural and comforting. There was laughter now, light and easy, replacing the earlier tension. Even small touches, a hand brushing against the other while lifting a sack, a shared glance across the field, carried the warmth of newfound understanding. By the time the sun had fully set and the sky turned shades of deep purple and pink, the ranch had grown quiet once more. The day's work was done, the animals settled, and the air was filled with a gentle calm. Jake and Lily stood near the porch, looking out over the fields. "I guess we survived the day," Lily said, her voice soft and playful. Jake chuckled, a small, genuine sound. "Yeah," he replied. "And maybe we even learned something about each other along the way." Lily smiled, nudging him lightly. "Maybe more than something," she teased. Jake shook his head, smiling despite himself. "Yeah, probably more than something." In that quiet, ordinary moment, the events of the day, the playful joke, the unexpected tension, and the heartfelt honesty had shifted something profound. They both knew the path ahead would not always be easy, that challenges and misunderstandings would come, but for now they had each other, and that was enough. The ranch, once simply a place of work and routine, had become a place of possibility, trust, and the beginning of something new. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Jake realized that sometimes the most unexpected moments, even moments that shock or confuse, could change everything for the better. The next morning dawned bright and clear, the sky a soft shade of blue with a few scattered clouds drifting lazily across the horizon. The ranch was quiet, the only sounds the distant lowing of cattle and the soft rustle of the wind through the tall grasses. Jake woke early, as he always did, moving through his morning routine with careful precision. But something was different now. The events of the previous evening lingered in his mind, the memory of Lily's honesty and warmth settling into a quiet corner of his heart. He poured a cup of strong coffee, savoring the familiar taste as he looked out over the pastures. For a long time he had relied on routine, on the work itself to keep his world in order. But now, the thought of Lily, her laughter, and her unshakable honesty added a new layer to his day, one that made him smile quietly to himself. He knew she had changed something in him, though he wasn't yet sure how to navigate it. Meanwhile, Lily was already up, tending to the smaller chores that began each day on the ranch. She moved with a quiet energy, filling water troughs, feeding the chickens, and checking the fences for any signs of trouble. She noticed immediately that Jake seemed different this morning. There was a softness in his gaze, a lightness in his step, as if the weight of yesterday's tension had shifted into something gentler. She felt a small flutter of hope. Maybe they could truly move forward together, not just as colleagues on the ranch, but as something more. The morning passed in a rhythm of tasks and quiet companionship. Jake repaired broken fence posts along the west pasture while Lily organized feed in the barn. Occasionally, they exchanged a glance or a small word of encouragement, and each time, the warmth between them grew. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but it was unmistakable to both of them. Around mid-morning, a more urgent problem arose. One of the calves, a small brown and white one, had wandered into the thicker brush near the edge of the property. It had become tangled in a fallen branch, and its frantic movements were beginning to scare it further. Lily spotted the calf first, her eyes widening with concern. "Oh, no," she muttered under her breath, rushing toward it. "We need to help it before it hurts itself." Jake, hearing the urgency in her voice, followed quickly. "I'll be right there," he called, his tone steady but alert. He knew the dangers of working in the brush. Snakes, uneven ground, and sharp branches could all pose a threat. But he trusted Lily's instincts, and together they moved toward the calf. The calf was struggling, twisting and turning, but Lily remained calm. She spoke softly to it, kneeling down to gently hold it still while Jake carefully removed the branches that had trapped it. The two worked seamlessly together, their movements coordinated without needing words. There was a quiet understanding, a trust that had begun to form between them, guiding each action.
Finally, the calf was free, shaking itself and running back toward the pasture with a relieved bleat.
Lily laughed softly, brushing dirt from her hands, while Jake gave a small nod of approval.
"You did well,"
he said, his voice carrying a rare warmth.
"That could have ended badly if we weren't careful."
Lily smiled, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction.
"We make a good team," she said simply.
Jake felt a small warmth spread through his chest. Those words, simple, honest, and unpretentious, struck something in him. He had always prided himself on his ability to handle challenges alone, but with Lily he realized that shared effort and mutual trust could accomplish far more than anything he had done by himself. After the excitement of rescuing the calf, they returned to their routine tasks, but the day felt different. There was a sense of closeness now, an unspoken bond that had been strengthened through action, trust, and shared responsibility. Jake found himself watching Lily more than he normally would, noticing the determination in her eyes, the ease with which she moved, and the quiet confidence that radiated from her every action. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Jake decided to take a short break. He walked toward the small creek that ran along the property, the water sparkling under the midday sun. Lily followed, carrying a bucket of water for the animals. They sat together on the grassy bank, the silence between them comfortable and easy. "I never realized how much work goes into keeping everything running," Lily said, her voice light but thoughtful.
"I knew it would be hard, but seeing it day after day,
"It's more than I imagined." Jake nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "It's not easy," he admitted.
but it's rewarding. You see the results of your work every day, and there's a sense of pride in knowing that everything depends on you. That's the life I've always known."
Lily smiled, glancing at him.
"And now you're letting me in on it," she said softly. "I can see why it matters so much to you, and I understand a little better why you do things the way you do."
The conversation was quiet, simple, and real. There were no grand declarations or dramatic gestures, just two people sharing thoughts and feelings in a way that felt natural. For Jake, it was a reminder that connection and understanding were as important as hard work and routine. Later in the afternoon, they returned to the barn to finish organizing the supplies. A small mishap occurred when a stack of feed bags toppled over, spilling grain across the floor. Lily laughed a soft, melodic sound, and together they quickly cleaned it up. In those ordinary moments, Jake noticed something important. It wasn't just the big gestures or dramatic events that mattered, but the small, shared experiences that built trust and closeness over time. By early evening, the ranch was quiet again, the cattle resting in the pastures, the sun lowering behind the hills, and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass across the fields. Jake and Lily paused near the porch, looking out over the land they had worked so hard to care for.
"I've never really thought about how much a person can grow just by being part of something," Lily said, her voice soft. "Not just growing physically or learning skills, but
growing inside, feeling capable, brave, connected." Jake nodded, understanding exactly what she meant.
I get it,"
he said.
"I've lived on this ranch my whole life, and I thought I knew everything about it. But having you here, it changes things."
Makes me see it differently. Lily smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest.
"I think we change each other,"
she said simply. Jake looked at her, seeing the truth in her words. She had challenged him in small ways, brought joy and light into his life, and shown him the value of vulnerability and trust. He realized that she had become not just a companion on the ranch, but someone who mattered deeply to him. As the sky turned deep shades of purple and pink, the stars beginning to twinkle above, Jake and Lily continued their tasks quietly. There was no rush, no urgency, just a shared rhythm and understanding. Each action, each word, each glance between them was a step toward something new, a deeper bond built not on words alone but on shared experiences, trust, and honesty. By the time the night settled fully over the ranch, they had finished their chores. The animals were fed and settled, the barn was tidy, and the ranch was calm.
Jake and Lily stood near the porch, looking out at the fields in the soft moonlight.
I think.
We're ready for whatever comes next, Lily said, her voice gentle but certain. Jake nodded, feeling a quiet confidence he hadn't felt before.
Yeah, he said. Together! In that moment, the ranch was more than just land and animals. It was a place of growth, understanding, and the beginnings of a deeper connection. The challenges they faced were real, but so was the bond that had formed between them.
And as they stood side by side ready to face whatever the future held, both Jake and Lily knew that they had found something rare and valuable. A partnership, a friendship, and perhaps, in time, something more. The morning air on the ranch was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of wildflowers and earth. Jake rose before sunrise, as he always did, moving quietly so as not to wake Lily.
The events of the past days lingered in his mind. Her honesty, the small moments of laughter, and the quiet trust that had begun to grow between them. He felt a sense of calm he hadn't realized he could experience.
The ranch no longer felt like just a place of work. It was a place where life, connection, and new possibilities coexisted with the land and animals he cared for so deeply. Lily was already up, preparing breakfast over the small stove in the cabin. The soft aroma of fresh bread and coffee filled the room as Jake stepped inside. She looked up, smiling warmly, and his chest lifted at the sight. Her presence had become as familiar and comforting as the sunrise, yet there was still a spark of energy in her that kept life on the ranch lively and unpredictable.
Good morning, she said softly, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. I made your favorite eggs and toast.
Jake smiled, feeling a quiet gratitude.
Thanks, Lily. Smells perfect.
They ate together in companionable silence, speaking occasionally about the day ahead and the chores waiting for them. But there was no tension now, no uncertainty. The past days had solidified a new understanding between them, a bond that was based on honesty, trust, and shared experience. Jake felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years, a feeling of connection that made even ordinary mornings feel extraordinary. After breakfast, they moved outside to begin the day's work. The cattle needed checking, fences required inspection, and the barn had to be organized for the week ahead. They worked side by side, moving with a quiet rhythm that felt natural and effortless. Occasionally, their hands brushed or their eyes met, and a small smile would pass between them, a silent acknowledgement of their growing bond. Around midday, a small challenge arose. A young calf had wandered near the riverbank, where the ground was soft and uneven. Lily spotted it immediately, concern flashing in her eyes.
We need to get it back to the pasture before it gets into trouble, she said firmly.
Jake nodded.
Let's do it together.
They approached the calf carefully, speaking softly to calm it.
Jake lifted the branch that had snagged the calf's leg, while Lily guided it towards safer ground.
The calf trembled briefly, then found its footing and ran happily back toward the herd. Jake looked at Lily, seeing the pride and relief on her face.
You handled that beautifully, he said.
Lily laughed softly.
We handled it together. Jake felt the truth in her words. The past days had shown him that life on the ranch, like life itself, was better when shared.
Challenges that seemed difficult alone became manageable, even enjoyable, when faced with someone you trusted. The afternoon brought a quiet moment, a break from the chores. They sat under the shade of an old oak tree, watching the cattle graze and listening to the gentle rustle of leaves. The sun cast long shadows across the fields, and for a moment the world felt still and perfect. Jake turned to Lily, his voice low and sincere. I've been thinking about everything that's happened.
About us.
Lily's eyes met his, steady and open.
Me too, she said. I realized something, he continued. I've spent my life focused on work, on keeping everything under control. But I've been missing something.
I've been missing this. He gestured between them, encompassing not just Lily but the connection, the trust, and the warmth that had grown over the past days. Lily reached out, taking his hand gently.
You're
Life isn't just about routines or control. It's about trust, connection, and being willing to open your heart even when it feels risky. Jake felt a quiet courage rise within him.
For the first time, he allowed himself to admit something fully and without hesitation.
I care about you, Lily.
More than I thought I ever could care about anyone. Lily's smile was radiant and she squeezed his hand.
I care about you too, Jake.
Always have. I just needed the right moment to tell you. They sat together for a long while, letting the silence speak for them. The ranch around them was alive with soft sounds. The wind through the trees, the gentle movements of cattle, the distant call of birds. Yet within the quiet, something deeper had shifted.
They had moved beyond words and gestures. They had formed a bond built on shared experiences, trust, and a genuine understanding of one another. As the day wore on, they continued their chores, their movements coordinated and easy.
They repaired fences, checked the water troughs, and ensured the animals were safe and well fed. Every task was infused with a new energy, a sense that even ordinary work could be meaningful when shared with someone who mattered. By evening, the ranch had a peaceful, settled feeling. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jake and Lily stood together near the porch, looking out over the fields they had worked so hard to care for. The cattle grazed quietly in the distance, the breeze was gentle, and the world seemed calm and whole.
I think we're ready for whatever comes next,
Lily said softly, her voice filled with quiet confidence.
Jake nodded, feeling a sense of certainty he had never felt before. Yes! Together! He said, and in his heart he knew it was true.
They walked slowly toward the barn, their hands brushing occasionally, their laughter light and easy. The ranch, once simply a place of work and routine, had become a space of possibility, connection, and hope. Every fence, every field, every animal was now part of their shared life, a life that was richer, fuller, and more meaningful than either had imagined. As darkness fell and stars began to twinkle overhead, they finished their chores for the day. The barn was secure, the cattle were settled, and the ranch was quiet under the night sky. They stood together for a moment, looking at the horizon.
I never thought a place like this could feel like home in more ways than one, Jake said, his voice soft.
Lily leaned gently against him.
It's home because of you,
she replied. He smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle in his heart.
The past days, the laughter, the challenges, the moments of honesty and trust had brought them to this point. Life on the ranch was not just about work or routine. It was about connection, love, and the courage to open one's heart.
They walked toward the cabin, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future held. The ranch would always demand hard work and dedication, but now it also held warmth, partnership, and the quiet strength of two people who had found each other in the ordinary moments of life. As they reached the cabin, Jake paused and looked at Lily. "Thank you," he said simply.
For being here. For trusting me.
For everything!
Lily smiled, her eyes shining in the moonlight.
Thank you for letting me in, she said. For trusting me too. They entered the cabin together, closing the door behind them.
Outside, the ranch was still and quiet, bathed in silver moonlight. The world was calm, peaceful, and full of possibility. Inside, two hearts had found a place to rest, to grow, and to thrive. Together, the story of the ranch, of Jake and Lily, had reached a turning point.
What began as a routine life filled with work and order had transformed into something more profound, a life of shared purpose, trust, and love. And as they settled in for the night, the future seemed bright, full of promise, and ready for whatever adventures lay ahead.
For Jake and Lily, the past days had shown that life's greatest moments often came from unexpected events, honesty, and the courage to be vulnerable. The ranch would always be their home, but it was their connection, their partnership, and their shared heart that had truly made it a place of warmth, hope, and endless possibility.